As many will recall, the Utah Jazz were cited to be going big game hunting, according to Danny Ainge. And while many different people had different interpretations of that, we have come to see that none of them were accurate. Now, specifically, he was quoted as saying, "Our plan is not to come into training camp with 6 kids under 20 years old. It's not like option A, option B, maybe not option C." However, that didn't end up being the case because they ended up getting Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski, and Cody Williams in this year's draft, and none of the free agents or tradable assets from other teams were available at the price point that they were looking for. So ultimately, it looks like we kind of let somebody down. And by somebody, I mean Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton if you view him to be in that same caliber of player. With that being said, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. Thanks for tuning in this video. If you're into NBA basketball, go ahead and smash that like button, turn on post notifications, and subscribe to the channel. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this one. The Jazz at the last trade deadline were allegedly looking to trade for a piece that could have pushed them into further playoff waters, but because they were unable to get them at the price point that Danny Ainge was hoping for, the player in particular was expected to be DeJounte Murray at the time, but the Hawks were not extremely pressed to trade him. However, they did end up trading him after the season ended for half of basically what they traded him for originally to get him from the Spurs, sending him to the New Orleans Pelicans. However, that comes a little bit later on down the line. There were several players that the Jazz wanted to have and obtain but have struck out at getting, and so they sold at last trade deadline similarly to how they did the season before. And into the offseason, Danny Ainge said that he was looking to make big moves, make a big splash, add some big time talent to the roster, go big game hunting. And it didn't happen. Or for better phrasing, nobody wanted to come to Utah from free agency, and nobody was available via trade at the price point that Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck were willing to pay. Some of the more interesting players that were available at the time, mainly because we found that the goal was to add somebody that was under the age of 30 so that they could at least be in the window of Lauri Markkanen, who is the resident lone star of the team alongside several supporting steady pieces. But the likes of Isaiah Hartenstein, who is now with the Oklahoma City Thunder, Pascal Siakam, who ended up re-signing with the Indianapolis Pacers, D'Angelo Russell, who had a player option, OG Anunoby, who had a player option but ended up declining it, but then ended up signing back with the one and only New York Knicks. Miles Bridges also ended up getting traded to the New York Knicks. So a lot of the people that they were interested in weren't available anymore. And if you want to talk about somebody that would be more interesting, there was a lot of word on the street about Devin Booker, maybe seeing if you could get the Tyrese Halliburtons of the world, seeing love that Luka Doncic would get if he joined Lauri Markkanen in Utah, but the likelihood of it being borderline impossible. There were even rumblings of Giannis coming out here, and we all knew that wasn't going to be something that was very likely. There were other pieces that were talked about, like Michael Porter Jr., Zion Williamson, like I said before, DeJounte Murray, Max Strus, Herb Jones, Dante DiVincenzo, Vassell from the Spurs, Lou Dort, Aaron Naismith, Desmond Bain, Grayson Allen, Josh Hart, Tyler Hero, Darius Garland. Even RJ Barrett at one point was brought to the table. But none of these pieces ended up being available for the Utah Jazz for one, and for two, those that were available for trade, again, weren't available for what we were willing to pay. So ultimately, that puts us into a world where Danny Ainge was saying, you know, I would love to add some really premier talent to the roster, but if I don't think they're worth the trade, I'm not going to get them and we'll just be boo-boo. And that's what they really did. The only player that seems to be stirring up the pot at all at this point is Brandon Ingram. However, the issue with Brandon Ingram is, well, he's not necessarily a lock on defense Offensively, he can be easily strapped. We saw it in the playoffs last season when Zion Williamson went down with injury and he failed to create offense against one Lou Dort, who was literally dog walking him the entire remainder of the series. And even though he does happen to be 26 years old, the fact remains, do you trust him to take the proper strides forward? Because in a lot of realms, he's not a number one. He's probably not a number two. He ideally might be a number three on a championship contender, maybe a number four. The simple fact of the matter is he's not necessarily known as being a winning player at any point in his career, and though he has been compared to Kevin Durant on several different levels and at several different points in his career, he quite hasn't lived up to the hype, though having a smooth and silky game to himself. Because, as I said before, people like Lou Dort, despite being premier defenders in the league, are able to address him properly over the entirety of 48 minutes of play, and that's not really good if you are a fan of Brandon Ingram or any team that he plays for. That said, in the 2022-2023 season, he averaged 24.7 points, and in the most recent season, 2023-2024, he averaged 20.8 and about 2 minutes less, but also 20 games more, putting him around 64 games played. I am a firm believer that he could be a positive addition, but I do not know how likely it is that something like that comes to fruition, especially since they ended up adding DeJounte Murray over there and creating a very impressive beast in New Orleans, if I do say so myself. The ultimate question then becomes, where do the Utah Jazz go from here? And because they were able to get the players that they were in the draft without having to move up, I do feel confident in their overall future. The question becomes, how fast can they develop, for one? And for two, how long Lauri is willing to be content in the area. Yes, we understand that he said that he enjoys the area for his family's sake, and because he does have young children, he wants to have a level of continuity about themselves. He also enjoys the housing situation in Utah because he comes from several different teams that didn't necessarily either have the preferred way or he had to stay in skyscrapers and high rises, which isn't something that he really prefers. He enjoys houses by his own accord. I believe that it would be reasonable to assume that there's about a year, and by year, I mean this year right here, left of tanking basketball from the Utah Jazz. The overall big game hunting failed miserably. There were no feats. There were a couple offers made, but ultimately everything got shot down that was attempted, and some people we just didn't even try to get. So I'm not going to sit here and assume that anything crazy happens. Oh, silly me. I forgot one. We gave Chris Dunn money in a sign-in trade, sending him over to the Clippers in exchange for Russell Westbrook for the second time. And you know what we did? We bought him out as the good faith organization that we are. And then he ended up signing with Denver to join Nikola Jokic, which will provide them with two of the leading active triple-double holders in the NBA. So what did the Jazz get out of this? Nothing, except for a little bit of cash. And the only addition they made alongside the rookies was Eubanks to the roster, who hasn't even officially been signed, but is expected to be. Along with that, after the Summer League, they ended up going ahead and cutting before the deals became guaranteed for both one Kenneth Lofton Jr. and Darius Bazley. And honestly, there just has to be a lot of pressure being put on these rookies and these second-year players, specifically Keontae George, to take that next step, along with Taylor Hendricks, because there are a lot of questions up in the air about Taylor Hendricks, because despite being drafted higher than Keontae George, he's a little bit less prepared. He's a little bit more raw. And while Keontae George shot absolute hot dog water from the field last year, he still had some supreme bright spots, and I think that it will be necessary for Taylor Hendricks to show some drastic improvement for people to continue to have faith in his abilities to be successful on the roster, and for him not to see the trade deadline come to pass with him on a different roster in a different colored jersey. Nevertheless, I believe that the Utah Jazz are in good hands. I think that this is unfortunate that they were unable to get pieces from other teams or pieces via trade, considering the just roller coaster of basketball that they've had put out for us the past 2 seasons. However, I do confidently believe that it is extremely likely that the development that we see this upcoming season from the one and only likes of Kyle Filipowski, Cody Williams, and perhaps Isaiah Collier could spark a very surprising interest. If those rookies, along with Keontae George, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Taylor Hendricks, all take that next step, and Walker Kessler as well, I believe that this is a very strong core of pieces that can aid Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen in a long-term playoff run that could span several years to come. And remember, this would make them slightly younger than the Oklahoma City Thunder, though Lauri is obviously older than most of the pieces on that roster. Overall, the core will be slightly younger, allowing them to probably be more successful for, at the very least, even if it's the same window of time, their window would be a little bit longer because they have just a little bit of more youth on their side. Overall, I believe that the Utah Jazz have a lot to work on. I believe that this preseason will tell us a lot, and the first 10 to 15 games of the regular season will give us a good feeler for what we're trying to do this year. Even though obviously we understand we are going to be tanking, we are looking at this next draft as being extremely highly regarded, and we plan on getting in on those high value sweepstakes because we just don't have the talent to compete in the playoffs. So why would you attempt to push for the play-in if you're not going to have the opportunity to make great heights? At the very least, that's the logic of the front office as of late. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Why do you think that the big game hunting failed? Are you happy about it? Are you sad about it? Are you pleased with the rookies that we got? Are you comfortable with us going into the regular season with 6 guys under 20 on the roster, or 6 guys at 20 on the roster, rather? With that being said, it's your boy Red Hoops. Thanks for tuning in this video. Go ahead and smash that like button if you enjoyed the video. Turn on your post notifications, subscribe to the channel, become a member, or drop a donation to help support the content. Without any further ado, good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.